The day my sister banned my daughter from her wedding was the day I realized just how far our family had fallen apart. Jessica didn't just exclude Lily, she locked her in the basement. And my father, he just laughed. That cold laugh still haunts me every time I think about that moment. My name is Emily, and this is the story of how my sister's cruelty and my father's betrayal nearly broke me and how I fought back. Growing up, Jessica was always the one who ruled our family with an iron fist. She had a temper that could turn a simple dinner into a battlefield. My father, James, worshipped her every word. No matter what she did, he found a way to justify it. I, meanwhile, was the quiet middle child who learned early on that speaking up meant more pain. But nothing prepared me for the day Jessica turned her wrath toward my daughter. Lily was 12, bright, gentle, and full of life. She was my heart, my reason to fight. From the moment she was born, I promised to protect her from the darkness that had consumed my own childhood. But Jessica had other plans. When the wedding plans started, I sensed the storm brewing. Jessica's controlling nature tightened its grip, and my daughter quickly became a target. It wasn't subtle cold looks, whispered insults, silent treatment, but it escalated. One afternoon, I got the call I dreaded Lily was missing. I raced home to find the basement door locked. Jessica stood at the top of the stairs with a smug smile, refusing to say where Lily was. The fear in my chest was suffocating. When I finally found Lily, her arm was broken, bruised badly. The pain in her eyes shattered me more than the injury itself. My father was there watching, his face twisted in amusement. He told me to go away. It's none of my business. The betrayal was unbearable. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I knew I couldn't stay silent any longer. This wasn't just family drama, it was abuse, and I was going to fight back with everything I had. This family, this toxic web of control and cruelty had to be exposed. As I stood over my daughter holding her broken arm, I made a silent vow. I would not let Jessica win. I would not let my father's cowardice destroy us. This was my battle not just for Lily, but for myself. Our family had long been ruled by fear and silence. Jessica's shadow had loomed over every gathering, every conversation, and my father's blind loyalty had only fueled her reign. I tried for years to keep peace, to hold on to what little love remained. But peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the courage to face it. And I was ready. The days before the wedding were filled with tension. Jessica's demands grew harsher, her hostility more blatant. Invitations were sent with Lily's name crossed out. Every attempt I made to reason with my family was met with dismissal or worse, condescension. The fractures in our family were no longer cracks. They were chasms. Yet beneath the anger and pain I found strength I didn't know I had. I began gathering evidence, photographs of bruises, recordings of confrontations, messages revealing the truth. I knew that to fight monsters, I had to shine a light on their darkness. This story is not just about cruelty. It is about survival, resilience, and the fierce love that pushes a mother to stand up against the world. The journey ahead would test me in ways I never imagined. But with Lily beside me, I was unstoppable. This is how the nightmare began and how I chose to turn it into my reckoning. Lily was more than just my daughter. She was my sanctuary, the light that pierced through years of darkness. From the moment she was born, I knew my life had changed forever. She had soft brown eyes that held a quiet wisdom beyond her years, and a smile that could melt even the hardest heart. But despite all the love I poured into her, Lily's place in our family was never secure. Jessica made sure of that. The resentment began subtly, small gestures that I tried to brush off as jealousy or misunderstandings. At family dinners, Lily would offer to help clear the table only to be ignored or told to stay out of grown-up conversations. On holidays, while my nieces and nephews received gifts thoughtfully chosen and wrapped with care, Lily was handed the leftovers or generic presents that barely concealed the lack of thought. I saw it all. I felt the sting of exclusion every time Lily's hopeful eyes searched for a sign of acceptance and found none. Jessica's disdain was the most painful. She spoke over. Lily dismissed her opinions and made cutting remarks disguised as jokes. One summer afternoon, as we prepared for Jessica's wedding, Lily asked me in a trembling voice, "Mom, do they even like me?" The question broke my heart. I wanted to tell her everything would be all right, that family is supposed to love unconditionally, but I couldn't lie. The truth was harsher. I told her that sometimes people hurt others because of their own fears and insecurities, not because of anything Lily had done. But even my words sounded fragile against the cold reality. Jessica's hostility wasn't just emotional, it began creeping into the physical realm. There were moments when Lily came home with bruises she wouldn't explain, or a sudden limp she tried to hide. I begged her to tell me what was happening, but fear kept her silent. The house where I grew up had become a battleground where my daughter was the unwilling casualty. My father's attitude only compounded the pain. He treated Lily's suffering as an inconvenience, something to be brushed aside. When I brought up my concerns, he dismissed me with a wave of his hand, telling me to stop stirring trouble. It was clear his loyalty to Jessica was unwavering, no matter the cost. The growing divide between me and my family felt like a wound that wouldn't heal. At times, I wondered if I was alone in my fight, isolated by the very people who were supposed to love me and Lily unconditionally. But through it all, Lily's resilience amazed me. She held on to her kindness and hope, even as the world around her grew colder. She found solace in her art, spending hours painting vivid landscapes and portraits that spoke of dreams far beyond the walls that confined her. Her school became a refuge, a place where teachers and friends saw the bright child I knew she was. Still, the scars left by family rejection ran deep. I remember a particular evening when Jessica hosted a family gathering. I arrived with Lily hoping for a semblance of normalcy, but Jessica's gaze was icy, her smile forced. When Lily approached to greet her cousins, Jessica turned away, ignoring her completely. The room fell into an awkward silence, and I could see Lily's face fall. That night she whispered to me, "Why don't they want me here?" The question lingered in the air, heavy with pain and confusion. I held her close, fighting back tears, and promised her that no matter what, she would always have a home with me. These moments piled up, each one chipping away at the fragile hope I had for family unity. I realized that Jessica's rejection was not about Lily's age, her behavior, or any tangible reason. It was about control and power. Jessica wanted to assert dominance, and Lily was the obstacle in her carefully crafted narrative. My father's complacency was an enabler, a silent approval of cruelty disguised as discipline or family loyalty. The wedding, which should have been a celebration of new beginnings, had become a symbol of exclusion and pain. Yet even in the darkest moments, I found strength in Lily's courage. She taught me that love is not defined by blood or approval, but by the fierce protection and unwavering support we give to those we cherish most. And so I began to prepare for the confrontation, for the fight that was coming, for the battle to reclaim my daughter's dignity and our family's fractured soul. The day Jessica banned Lily from her wedding was the day I saw the true extent of her cruelty. It started with a message that seemed almost casual but was heavy with malice. Lily was not welcome at the wedding. The excuse was thin, she was not appropriate for the event, too much trouble, or simply not family. I tried to reason, to plead, but Jessica's mind was made up. What shocked me wasn't just the exclusion itself, but the coldness with which it was delivered. It was a calculated blow meant to isolate Lily and send a clear message about her place in the family. But Jessica did not stop there. When I confronted her about the message, she smirked and told me to stay out of her affairs. The tension that had been simmering beneath the surface exploded shortly after. One afternoon, I received a frantic call from Lily. Her voice was shaky, scared. She said Jessica had locked her in the basement after an argument and that she was hurt. I dropped everything and rushed to the house I had once called home. When I arrived, the front door was open, but the silence inside was deafening. I called out for Lily, but there was no answer. I found the basement door locked tight. Jessica standing guard at the top of the stairs, a cruel grin plastered across her face. "She's not going anywhere," Jessica said flatly. Panic surged through me. I pleaded, begged, but Jessica only laughed. I forced the door open and found Lily curled up on the cold floor, tears streaming down her face, clutching her arm. It was swollen and bruised, a brutal, unmistakable break. The sight of my daughter in pain, abandoned and betrayed by her own aunt, shattered something inside me. My heart ached, my mind raced with a fury I had never known, but the worst was yet to come. My father appeared behind Jessica, his face twisted into a sneer as he watched me struggle. Instead of helping, he laughed a cold, mocking sound that echoed through the empty house. "Go away, Emily," he said. "This is family business." His words cut deeper than any blow. I realized then that the people who should have protected Lily were the very ones tearing her apart. The betrayal stung like a physical wound, but it also ignited a fire within me. I refused to let Jessica's cruelty and my father's indifference destroy my daughter or me. That night, I held Lily as she cried herself to sleep. Her pain was unbearable, but so was my helplessness. I knew the road ahead would be long and brutal, but I promised her I would fight with every ounce of strength I had. The following days were a whirlwind of doctor's visits, police reports, and whispered conversations. Jessica and my father played their parts flawlessly, twisting the narrative to make me the villain. They painted me as an overprotective mother, an unstable woman causing unnecessary drama. Their family backed them up, turning a blind eye to the abuse. The isolation was suffocating. Friends began to distance themselves, unsure who to believe. But I held on to the truth. I gathered every piece of evidence I could, photos of Lily's injuries, text messages, eyewitness accounts. Each one was a brick in the fortress I was building around my daughter and me. Despite the chaos, Lily's spirit remained unbroken. Her resilience gave me hope and reminded me why I had to keep fighting. I began to understand that this battle was about more than just one broken arm or one ruined wedding. It was about reclaiming our dignity and refusing to be silenced. The very foundations of our family were cracking, and I was ready to tear down the walls of deception and cruelty. What followed was a series of confrontations, legal battles, and painful revelations. Jessica's facade of innocence crumbled as more people came forward, exposing the truth behind the family's polished exterior. My father's laughter was replaced by anger and desperation as the consequences of his blind loyalty caught up with him. Through it all, I remained steadfast. I was no longer the quiet middle child who swallowed her pain. I was a mother defending her child with everything she had. The fight was just beginning, but one thing was clear. Jessica and my father would no longer hold power over us. The family that once sought to destroy Lily and me was about to face the reckoning they deserved. After the incident with Lily's broken arm and the locked basement door, the reactions from my family were as brutal and unforgiving as Jessica's actions themselves. Rather than expressing concern or remorse, my family rallied behind Jessica and my father, creating an atmosphere of hostility and isolation around me and Lily. The messages started coming almost immediately, texts and calls filled with blame and accusations. Jessica's friends and some relatives echoed her narrative, painting me as a hysterical mother, desperate for attention and stirring up drama where there was none. They claimed that I was overreacting, exaggerating incidents to tarnish Jessica's reputation before her big day. My mother, who had remained mostly silent during the initial confrontation, suddenly became a vocal critic. She told me that family was about forgiveness and that I was tearing us apart. Her words felt like knives, especially knowing how long she had watched without intervening. The pressure was relentless. At family gatherings, I was met with cold stares and whispered conversations. Invitations stopped coming, and when I did show up unannounced, I was met with icy silence or thinly veiled hostility. Even my father's demeanor shifted from amused indifference to sharp condemnation. He told me repeatedly that I was destroying the family for the sake of a broken arm and a quarrel. The isolation was suffocating. I watched helplessly as Lily was further marginalized, her presence treated as an inconvenience or a provocation. School friends noticed the bruises and asked questions, but Lily was too afraid to explain. At home, she retreated further into herself, her laughter replaced by silence. The emotional toll on both of us was immense. The people who were supposed to protect us had become our tormentors. I realized that this was not just about Jessica's cruelty, but a systemic failure of the family to stand up for what was right. The weight of betrayal pressed down on me every day, but amidst the hostility, I found unexpected allies. A few distant relatives uncomfortable with the family's cruelty reached out quietly, offering support and listening ears. Some teachers at Lily's school expressed concern and offered resources for counseling and legal advice. These small gestures of kindness were a lifeline reminding me that not everyone had turned their back on us. The emotional pressure also fueled a growing determination within me. I refused to be silenced or isolated. Every message of blame, every cold shoulder only strengthened my resolve to fight for Lily's safety and dignity. I began documenting everything meticulously: the threats, the dismissals, the indifference. I kept copies of texts and emails, recorded conversations when possible, and sought legal counsel to understand our options. My days became a balancing act between caring for Lily's physical recovery and navigating the treacherous waters of family politics. The strain was immense, but I knew that yielding was not an option. The more my family tried to push us away, the louder my voice grew. One evening, after a particularly harsh phone call from my mother accusing me of ruining everything, I sat with Lily and told her the truth, that some people choose cruelty, but that we would stand together no matter what. Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded, a small spark of defiance in her gaze. That moment became a turning point. I realized that the battle was not only about exposing Jessica's abuse, but about reclaiming our place in the world and rebuilding our lives on our own terms. I also understood that the family's attempts to control and isolate us were driven by fear of losing control and fear of the truth coming to light. This gave me an advantage. Knowing their weaknesses allowed me to plan my next moves carefully. The path ahead was fraught with conflict, but I was no longer afraid. Lily's broken arm was the breaking point, but it was also the catalyst for change. As the pressure from my family intensified, so did my determination to fight back smartly, strategically, and with unwavering courage. The war for our freedom and dignity was just beginning, and I was ready to lead it. Looking back, the signs of Jessica's cruelty and the toxic dynamics within our family were always there, hidden in plain sight, like shadows lurking at the edges of our lives. The physical abuse against Lily was not an isolated incident, but the culmination of years of emotional manipulation and control. As a child, I endured Jessica's harshness, though it was often disguised as sibling rivalry or parental favoritism. She wielded her power like a weapon, and our father's unwavering support made her untouchable. I remember how she would belittle me in front of others, diminish my accomplishments, and twist words to make me seem unreasonable. Those early experiences shaped how I approached motherhood, determined not to repeat the cycle. But despite my efforts, Jessica's animosity extended beyond me to my daughter. There were countless moments that in retrospect were warning signs of the darkness to come. Birthday parties where Lily's invitations were lost or delayed. Family dinners where she was ignored or seated separately, whispered conversations that stopped the moment she entered the room. More subtle were the jabs disguised as jokes, the backhanded compliments, and the constant undermining of Lily's confidence. Jessica's behavior was a calculated form of control designed to isolate and weaken. My father's role in this toxic environment was equally damaging. His blind loyalty to Jessica often meant dismissing my concerns and minimizing the abuse. When I tried to speak up, he would admonish me for causing trouble or breaking up the family. This dynamic created a dangerous silence where Jessica's actions went unchecked and her power grew. Over the years, I tried to cope by internalizing the pain and focusing on building a safe space for Lily outside the family's reach. But the wounds inflicted by Jessica and the tacit approval from my parents left deep scars on both of us. I often wonder how different things might have been if someone had intervened earlier, or if the family had acknowledged the toxicity instead of burying it. These reflections fueled my resolve once the physical abuse came to light. The broken arm was a stark, undeniable proof of the cruelty that had been lurking beneath the surface for years. It shattered any illusion that this was a typical family dispute. It was abuse deep, deliberate, and dangerous. Documenting the past became an essential part of my fight. I collected old photos showing bruises, saved text messages where Jessica's threats were thinly veiled, and gathered testimonies from friends and distant relatives who had witnessed her behavior. Each piece of evidence was a thread in the tapestry of truth I was weaving to expose the darkness that had hidden behind family smiles. The emotional toll of revisiting these memories was immense. I had to confront not only Jessica's cruelty, but also the role my parents played in enabling it. The pain of betrayal was raw, but it was also a catalyst for change. Through this process, I learned that acknowledging the past is a necessary step toward healing. It gave me clarity and strengthened my conviction to protect Lily at all costs. I also began to understand the complex psychology behind abuse, the cycles of control denial and manipulation that trap families in patterns of suffering. Armed with this knowledge, I prepared myself to face the challenges ahead with a new perspective. The past had shaped us, but it would not define us. As I pieced together the history of abuse and control, I realized that this story was not just about pain, but about survival and resilience. It was a testament to the power of a mother's love and the unyielding spirit of a child determined to rise above cruelty. The broken arm was a breaking point, but it was also a beginning, a moment when silence ended and truth took its rightful place. From this moment forward, I vowed to be a voice for Lily and all those silenced by toxic families. Our journey was far from over, but with every step we reclaimed our dignity and our freedom. After the painful reflections on past abuses and the immediate crisis with Lily's broken arm, I found myself overwhelmed by a storm of emotions. Fear, anger, sadness, and exhaustion battled inside me. The betrayal by my own family, especially my father's refusal to protect us, cut deeper than any wound. Yet amidst the chaos, a fierce determination began to grow, a resolve to no longer accept this toxic cycle. I realized that the pain I felt was not just for myself, but for Lily, whose innocence had been stolen too soon. I could not allow her to suffer in silence as I had. The nights were the hardest. I lay awake listening to Lily's quiet sobs, feeling helpless, yet fueled by a promise I had made to her to protect her at any cost. I thought about the life I wanted for her, one filled with safety, love, and dignity, far from the cruelty of our family. This resolve gave me strength, but it also brought a heavy burden. The road ahead would be filled with conflict, heartache, and difficult choices. I knew that fighting Jessica and my father meant risking further alienation and pain, but staying silent was no longer an option. I began to envision a plan, a way to expose the truth and reclaim our lives. It would require courage, patience, and strategic thinking. I reminded myself that protecting Lily was worth every challenge. At the same time, I wrestled with guilt and self-doubt. Was I overreacting? Was I making things worse by confronting my family? These questions haunted me, but Lily's resilience reminded me that my fight was just. Her strength in facing adversity inspired me daily. I also found unexpected support in close friends who listened without judgment and offered practical advice. Their encouragement helped me regain confidence and clarity. As I prepared to face the battles ahead, I focused on rebuilding my own sense of self-worth. Years of living under Jessica's shadow and my father's indifference had eroded my confidence. Now I understood that standing up for my daughter and myself was an act of courage, not weakness. I embraced the idea that seeking help, whether legal, emotional, or social, was a sign of strength. Each day I worked to heal both myself and Lily, fostering an environment where she could thrive despite the past. Our bond grew stronger, rooted in trust and unwavering love. The decision to fight was not made lightly. I knew it would change our lives forever, but it was a necessary step toward freedom. I resolved to face the challenges with clear eyes and an open heart, ready to defend what mattered most. The emotional journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hope. A hope that justice would prevail and that Lily and I could create a future free from fear. This turning point marked the beginning of our fight not just against Jessica and my father, but against the legacy of pain that had haunted our family for too long. I was ready to reclaim our story, to rewrite it with strength, resilience, and love. With a fierce resolve burning inside me, I knew that simply enduring Jessica's cruelty and my father's betrayal was no longer enough. Protecting Lily meant I had to act not impulsively, but with a calculated and strategic approach. I began by gathering every piece of evidence that could expose the truth. Photographs of Lily's bruises and swollen arm screenshots of threatening or dismissive messages from Jessica and my father, recordings of conversations where they belittled or threatened us all. These became bricks in the foundation of my case. I meticulously documented every encounter, every slight, and every incident that reflected the abuse and neglect we endured. I knew that in order to break the cycle, I needed to present an undeniable truth not only to my family, but if necessary to the authorities and the broader community. I sought legal advice early on, consulting with a family law attorney who specialized in abuse cases. The lawyer guided me on how to proceed with protective orders and how to compile my evidence effectively. This legal framework gave me a sense of empowerment I hadn't felt before. I was no longer helpless. Armed with knowledge and evidence, I began to confront Jessica and my father not with anger or rage, but with clear, firm communication that left no room for denial. When Jessica tried to dismiss my accusations or paint me as unstable, I calmly presented facts and witnesses. My father's usual dismissiveness faltered under the weight of truth I wielded so confidently. I was careful to protect Lily's privacy and dignity throughout this process, ensuring that our fight was not a public spectacle, but a fight for justice. Parallel to this, I reached out to support groups for families affected by abuse and toxic dynamics. Connecting with others who had faced similar struggles reinforced my conviction and provided practical advice for navigating this difficult path. These connections reminded me that we were not alone. At school, I worked with counselors and administrators to ensure Lily's safety and well-being. They helped set up a support plan and monitored Lily for any signs of distress or bullying. Knowing that Lily had allies outside the family was a comfort and a vital part of our healing. Throughout this battle, I maintained a calm but resolute demeanor. I refused to let Jessica's provocations derail me. When she sent hostile messages or tried to manipulate others against me, I responded only with facts and silence, letting the evidence speak louder than words. I learned to pick my battles focusing on what truly mattered: Lily's safety and dignity. I also made sure to take care of my own mental health, seeking therapy to process the trauma and stress. This allowed me to approach the conflict with a clearer mind and a steadier heart. My relationship with Lily deepened as we faced this fight together. She learned to trust herself and to stand strong, seeing firsthand her mother's courage and determination. This bond became our greatest strength. As the confrontation with my family escalated, their attempts to discredit me grew more desperate. They spread rumors and tried to isolate me socially. But because I had built a solid foundation of truth and support, their efforts faltered. Slowly but surely, cracks appeared in their facade. Jessica's friends began to distance themselves, and some relatives started asking questions. My father's influence waned as more people recognized the reality behind his protective stance for Jessica. I also used social media, cautiously sharing parts of our story to raise awareness about the realities of family abuse while protecting Lily's identity. The response was overwhelming, with many reaching out to share their own experiences and offer support. This public awareness added pressure on my family, forcing them to confront the consequences of their actions. Through smart resistance combining legal action, emotional resilience, strategic communication, and public awareness, I reclaimed control over my life and my daughter's safety. This fight was not just about winning, but about breaking free from a cycle of abuse and reclaiming our dignity. The journey was exhausting and painful, but every step forward was a victory. Jessica and my father's attempts to silence us only fueled my determination. I learned that true strength lies not in anger, but in patience, preparation, and unwavering commitment to what is right. Together, Lily and I stood firm against the storm, knowing that the battle was far from over, but confident that justice and healing were within reach. As the truth about Jessica's cruelty and my father's complicity began to surface, the family dynamics shifted dramatically. The once solid front of loyalty to Jessica and denial of abuse started to crumble, causing fractures and divisions that had been simmering beneath the surface for years. Some family members remained staunch supporters of Jessica, unwilling or unable to accept the reality of her actions. They defended her vehemently, accusing me of fabricating stories to damage the family's reputation. Their denial was a protective shield, an unwillingness to confront the uncomfortable truth. Others, however, began to question what they had been told and to see the situation through new eyes. A handful of cousins, aunts, and uncles reached out privately expressing sympathy and regret that it had taken so long for the truth to come out. This growing divide created tension at family gatherings, which became rare and fraught with conflict. Conversations turned into arguments, and meetings dissolved into cold silences or bitter exchanges. Jessica and my father found themselves increasingly isolated as their influence waned. Jessica's usual confidence faltered when confronted with questions and accusations from relatives who had once blindly trusted her. My father's once unquestioned authority was challenged openly for the first time in decades. The pressure was mounting, and cracks in their carefully maintained facade were becoming visible to all. Social media and community chatter added fuel to the fire. Stories and accusations circulated, and people began taking sides. The family was no longer united, but fractured, with alliances shifting and loyalties tested. Jessica's reputation suffered greatly. The woman once admired for her poise and control now faced scrutiny and condemnation. Invitations to social events dwindled, and friends distanced themselves. The consequences of her actions extended beyond the family, touching every aspect of her life. Meanwhile, I found unexpected support from some relatives who had previously been silent or distant. Their willingness to listen and validate our experiences was a balm to my wounded spirit. These alliances helped counterbalance the hostility and reminded me that I was not alone in this fight. The strain on family relationships was profound. Some bonds were broken permanently, while others remained fragile and tentative. The healing process would take time, but acknowledgement of the harm done was a necessary first step. Throughout this upheaval, I remained focused on protecting Lily and rebuilding our lives. The divisions in the family underscored the toxic environment we had escaped, reinforcing the importance of maintaining distance from those who refused to change. I also continued to document developments, gathering testimonies and evidence to safeguard our position in any ongoing legal or social proceedings. The process was exhausting but vital. As the family splintered, Jessica and my father grew increasingly desperate. Their attempts to regain control were met with resistance and skepticism. The truth had become their undoing, and their past actions were no longer hidden behind lies and silence. Despite the pain and disruption, I felt a cautious hope. The breaking of the family's silence and denial opened the door to healing and justice. Lily's courage in facing the ordeal alongside me was a beacon of light in the darkness. Our journey had exposed the wounds that had long been ignored and forced a reckoning that could not be avoided. The family's reaction and division marked a turning point in our story. It was a moment of reckoning not just for Jessica and my father, but for all of us. The path ahead would be difficult, but it was also filled with the possibility of growth, accountability, and eventually peace. The moment I decided to go public with our story was both terrifying and liberating. I knew that exposing Jessica's cruelty and my father's complicity would shake the foundations of our family and send ripples through the community, but it was a necessary step to protect Lily and reclaim our dignity. I carefully crafted a letter that laid bare the truth without anger or accusation, just facts and evidence. I shared it with extended family, first giving them the opportunity to understand and respond. Some replied with shock and apologies, while others remained silent or hostile. Soon after, I made the difficult decision to share our story more broadly through social media and local support groups. The response was overwhelming. Messages of support poured in from strangers who had faced similar pain. Their stories echoed ours, creating a network of solidarity that strengthened my resolve. The community's reaction forced Jessica and my father into a corner. The polished image they had maintained for years crumbled under scrutiny. Friends and acquaintances distanced themselves, and the social consequences were swift. Jessica lost invitations to events and faced growing isolation. The pressure was not just social but professional as well. Rumors and revelations began to affect her work relationships. My father, once a pillar of authority, found himself questioned and challenged. The respect he commanded eroded as people learned of his role in enabling abuse. Within the family, the divide deepened. Some relatives sought reconciliation, acknowledging the harm and expressing willingness to support Lily and me. Others clung to denial, unwilling to face the uncomfortable truths. Legal avenues were also pursued. With the evidence gathered and community support, I was able to take formal steps to ensure Lily's safety and hold Jessica accountable. Protective orders and court proceedings became part of our reality, adding another layer of complexity and challenge. Despite the difficulties, this public reckoning brought a sense of justice and closure that had eluded us for so long. Lily's well-being improved as she was surrounded by genuine care and protection. She began to heal physically and emotionally, her confidence returning with each passing day. I too found a renewed sense of purpose. The fight had been exhausting and painful, but it had also been transformative. It was not merely about punishing wrongdoing, but about reclaiming our lives and future. I realized that truth has a power that cannot be silenced. The public exposure forced accountability and opened the door to healing. For Jessica and my father, the consequences were harsh but deserved. Their actions had inflicted deep wounds, and the ripple effects would last for years. Yet in the midst of this reckoning, I held on to hope. Hope that families could break cycles of abuse, that victims could find strength in their voices, and that love could ultimately prevail over cruelty. Our story became a testament to resilience and the power of standing up for what is right. It was a turning point not just for Lily and me, but for anyone who had suffered in silence. The path forward was still uncertain, but with justice on our side and a community behind us, we faced it with courage. The public reckoning marked the beginning of a new chapter, one where healing was possible and freedom was within reach. As the dust settled from the public confrontation and the family's fractures deepened, I began to understand the true value of self-worth and freedom. For years, I had allowed the toxic dynamics of my family to define who I was and what I believed I deserved. But through this journey, I realized that my worth was not tied to their approval or acceptance. Protecting Lily had forced me to rediscover my own strength and dignity. I learned that standing up for oneself and one's children is an act of courage, not selfishness. The freedom that came with breaking away from a harmful environment was liberating. I no longer felt shackled by expectations or fearful of rejection. Instead, I embraced a new identity, one rooted in resilience and love. The healing process was ongoing, filled with ups and downs, but the progress was undeniable. Lily began to thrive in ways I had only dreamed of, her laughter returning and her spirit shining brighter each day. I focused on building a life filled with positive influences, supportive relationships, and healthy boundaries. This transformation extended beyond my immediate family. I found peace in cultivating friendships and communities that valued honesty, respect, and kindness. I also made peace with the fact that some family relationships might never heal fully, and that was okay. Not every connection is meant to last forever, especially when it endangers our well-being. I understood that forgiveness does not require forgetting or accepting harm, but can be a personal choice to release bitterness and move forward. The experience taught me invaluable lessons about love and protection. It deepened my empathy for others trapped in similar situations and inspired me to advocate for victims of family abuse. I shared our story cautiously, hoping to provide hope and courage to those still suffering in silence. Looking back, I recognized that the journey was as much about self-discovery as it was about justice. It revealed the power of resilience, the importance of standing firm, and the beauty of love's protective instinct. My relationship with Lily became the cornerstone of our healing and growth. Together, we rebuilt our lives free from the shadows of fear and control. The path was not easy, but it was ours, chosen with intention and strength. In embracing our worth and freedom, we found a new definition of family, one based on respect, trust, and unwavering support. This realization was the most profound victory of all, marking the end of one chapter and the hopeful beginning of another. Closing message and invitation for reflection. 600 words. The journey we have walked together is one of pain, resilience, and ultimately hope. It is a story that many may find familiar, yet uniquely painful in its details. Through every betrayal, every moment of silence, and every battle fought, the core truth remains clear. Love and courage can triumph over cruelty and control. My experience has taught me that family is not simply defined by blood or tradition, but by the respect and care we show one another. When those bonds become toxic, breaking free is not an act of disloyalty, but an act of survival. I invite anyone listening who finds themselves in similar shadows to know they are not alone. There is strength in seeking help, in speaking out, and in protecting those we love. No one should endure abuse in the name of family, and no voice demanding justice is ever too loud. This story is a testament to the power of standing firm even when it feels like the world is against you. It is a reminder that healing begins with acknowledging the truth and having the courage to embrace it. My daughter Lily and I continue to rebuild our lives each day, a step forward toward peace and happiness. The road ahead may still hold challenges, but with love as our guide, we face it unafraid. Thank you for listening to our story. If it resonates with you, I encourage you to share your experiences. Reach out for support and never underestimate the power of your voice. Together, we can break cycles of pain and create a future where love and respect prevail. Let this be a call to courage for those who suffer in silence and for those willing to stand beside them. Our story ends here, but the fight for justice and healing continues. May we all find the strength to choose love over fear and freedom over control.